Hi, it's Rob Bryanton back here with the Imagining the 10th Dimension video log, and today we are talking to Gevin Giorbran, the author of Everything Forever, Learning to See Timelessness, one of my favorite books, and a book that really opened my eyes to how important the aspects of grouping and symmetry are to the way that our reality is created. Gevin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rob. Good to be here.
So, for me, when I was first introduced to your ideas, the thing that was really the boing moment for me was when you got to the idea that at the outside edges of our reality, everything unfolds back into zero. And when I was creating the graphic for my project, I had intuitively understood that, but I hadn't really seen all the ramifications of it that you introduced me to. The idea in the helix graphic that's associated with this project, having the 0 at the bottom and the 10 both on a line that connects the two of them together was deliberately placed there because that was what I was seeing. But what you introduced me to was the idea that the end of our universe unfolds back into that same 0 again, an unfolded symmetry. And the idea that there is symmetry and grouping happening throughout our reality is one of the ideas that that you really so eloquently introduced us to. And do you want to talk a little bit about that today?
Well, it's interesting the way we sort of reject the notion that the idea of unfoldment, the way that things can, in a sense, be enfolded into something and invisible to us and there, but we just can't see them. With symmetry order, I mean, we're actually accustomed to those kind of concepts in certain ways. For example, light. We appreciate that white light contains all the primary colors and the tertiary colors, and that they're somehow in there. But we don't really actually think of white light as full, as if the colors are literally inside there, creating the white light, and that's the concept in the book. You know, that's probably the key concept that I'm trying to explain, is that what appears to us to be nothing, to have no qualities, can in a sense be an unfolded order, in the same way I explain it in the book using everything in my refrigerator. If I take it all out and I throw it in the pot and cook it for hours and hours and hours, and I stir the pot and add a little bit of water, and eventually all those things combine together into one. They combine together into a mush, but it's one, and that's the way symmetry order is. Even though we don't visibly recognize that something is full, it's actually a feature of nature. It's a very basic phenomenon in reality, and it's something that we don't today recognize in science. Science has not learned yet to appreciate the notion that what appears to us as nothing, something uniform, something such as space, can be full rather than empty. We are still thinking in the notion that empty space is nothing or empty, and we see the world as all above or greater than or more than that nothingness. And that's how we all, from birth, that's how we all learn to perceive the world around us. And so that it really connects back to the question of why the universe seems so miraculous and why it seems so impossible to exist, because how can there be all this matter and somethingness in contrast to the nothingness that is more fundamental, and that's in a sense that everything has somehow arisen above, and that is a whole mental, it's a whole mindset. And when you begin, you know, as you have with both your writing and apparently from reading my ideas, is that you can start to suddenly recognize that there's this whole other way of seeing the world, to where you can recognize that everything is less than everything, that everything is in a sense a fragment of this one great whole. And it makes so much sense in terms of the many worlds theory and quantum theory, because we're accustomed in science to seeing that the quantum probability wave as containing all these other possibilities, and then we say, well, but then there's this one real one that comes out of that probability wave, and that's the one we experience, and that's the real world, and that's only physical reality. Well, in this mindset, you switch then, and you realize that everything is enfolded into that probability wave actually represents the whole, and we are just one fragment within that whole. And so you're seeing things as less than the whole, rather than everything as more than nothing.
Exactly. Now, one of the ideas that I talked about and that I have a song about is the idea that the Big Bang is an illusion. After reading your book, I also rewrote one of my songs. I had a song called Big Bang to Entropy, which 2 years ago was what I had been taught, and most of science continues to teach, is that the end of our universe is entropy. And the chorus of my song was Big Bang to Entropy, repeated 3 times. The chorus of the song now, I'm still acknowledging entropy as something that people think of as the ending, so I say it once, but the song now goes Big Bang to Entropy, Big Bang to Symmetry, Big Bang to everything, so that it starts to
Ooh, I like
acknowledge
it.
the idea that that there is something in our reality outside the Big Bang, outside the end of our universe, and that's that unfolded symmetry that you're talking about. So,
It's sort of a switch on the direction. I mean, and it's classical as far as relates exactly to what I was talking about. That two ways of seeing things, because we see, in science, and typically our most casual way of looking at the Big Bang is to think of the past as more and more dense, and more the creation, in the sense, the origin of somethingness, and then as we move into the future, scientists believe the universe is becoming disordered and dying, and all the usable energy is being used up, and so we're moving towards, in a sense, nothingness, and the universe is just dying, and eventually there won't be any substance or reality or physical material, and so again we're seeing like the world is more than nothing, and when you make the switch, then you can see that actually the Big Bang is the past is less than where we're moving towards, and the universe is moving into and becoming, rather than dissolving and disintegrating.
right, and the idea then that that science has taught us that there's this hopelessness at the end of our universe becomes turned on its head. It's actually quite a wonderful thing that we're heading towards when you think about it in these terms.
It's horrible. It's horrible the way. I mean, it's a consequence of not understanding the universe, of not understanding the two kinds of order, of just seeing the universe through a paradigm of order and disorder, and from that perspective, and it's natural, and you can't expect people, our history, to have understood immediately the whole universe and everything there is to know. And so, yeah, we have to go through these stages, and so, yeah, but you do, when you appreciate the two kinds of order and recognize that the universe is not order becoming disorder, but is the order of the past, the Big Bang, which is imbalance, or in a sense, a lesser kind of order, and the universe is flowing and moving towards, evolving towards symmetry order, or the whole, and becoming the everything. And so in a sense, we're moving from half to the whole. And when you understand that, looking back on the way we've understood the universe in the past as dying, as disintegrating, it's it's like coming out of the dark. It's an amazing step.
So, and the interesting thing about this is what we're talking about really isn't that far away from what some scientists are saying. Like I've been quoting Seth Lloyd and his book Programming the Universe, who invites us to think of the Big Bang, starting from the very first yes/no binary decision, and what you're talking about then, the Big Bang being the very first maximum grouping order, is really the same idea, isn't it?
Yes, I agree. It is very more to look at the Big Bang as the beginning of, or the core, the most simple expression of matter or distinction or form. And I mean that's correct. Grouping order is the order of distinction and form and definition. But we need to appreciate the fact that grouping order is an order of imbalance, and in order for there to be distinction, there has to be this apart from that, and this apart from that means, in reality, it means positive apart from negative, or it involves some sort of symmetry, up down, right left. Everything is relative, and in grouping order. Grouping order is in a sense the side of nature that expresses the distinctions that are possible, and symmetry order is the kind of order that erases all those distinctions, and rather than erasing them into a nothingness, they actually are, the distinction is erased, but the all the parts in a sense are come together and form the whole.
So maybe we should just step back for people who are watching this who aren't familiar with the concept of grouping and symmetry, and just talk about exactly what those two orders are. One of the things, one of the examples that is often given for this is if you were to toss a coin 100 times, you wouldn't just end up with heads, tails, head, tails. You would end up with a mixing of heads, 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 tails, tails, heads, tails, heads, heads, heads. And if you were to then zoom in on that set, you would find places where there was more grouping, and you would find places where there was more symmetry. You would find places where heads happened more times than tails. You would find places which would be a grouping order, and you would find places where it did happen to work out to the 50-50 distribution that you're expecting, heads, tails, heads, tails. So if we're thinking of information equals reality, which if you type those three words into Google, you'll find some interesting stuff about that, then the fabric of our reality is basically a result of a certain amount of grouping that happened at the beginning, which selected from all of the possible universes that could exist the one that we're in right now, and that very first quantum frame is the maximum grouping order, and we're now moving towards the symmetry order that's going to happen at the other end of our universe. Do you think that's a fair way to describe it?
Yes, with the coins, in a sense, if you flip 100 coins, you can take and all the heads to one side, put all the heads to one side, and that's in a sense one group of all the heads, and then all the tails to the other side, and that's the group of all the tails, and that's the ultimate in a sense grouping order or definition. It's you have two groups, you have two opposite or polar groups. And the same is true with positive and negative, all the positives to one side, all the negatives to the other. So grouping order is, in a sense, things separated and divided apart. But then, as everyone knows, if you take positive and negative, and if you combine them together, you create a neutrality, you create a unity. And then all of a sudden, all you have is neutral. You don't have those positives over here or those negatives over here. Now, it's interesting because, that example is a good one, especially in relating it to, like, for example, music. Notes can be arranged in an orderly fashion. They can be in rhythm. There can be a steady rhythm, so that you have, in a sense, a positive, then a delay, which is in a sense your negative, and then your positive, and then your delay, and then your so you can have a steady rhythm, or you can bring all the notes together and make a rather than a rhythm, a repeating series, you can have them all together and make one loud sound. And that's an example of the way the more you divide all the positives and all the negatives apart, the more each becomes more pronounced. Um, and that's, in a sense, the Big Bang. The first moment is the ultimate in pronunciation for the universe, for reality. It's the ultimate state of all the positives divided apart from all the negatives. And then the Big Bang happens, and that is, in a sense, the collision of the positive and the negative coming together. And then the universe, as the universe evolves, it evolves towards the state of being neutral. We know the expansion of the universe is now accelerating, and physicists are beginning to understand that the universe is moving towards absolute zero, and absolute zero is neutrality. It is what we think of as empty space. But once you appreciate grouping and symmetry, then you can realize, oh, but the zero isn't actually nothingness or empty space. The zero is actually the full. It's neutral. It's all the positives combined together with all the negatives. And in terms of universes, or like the many worlds theory, we're talking about, it's a matter of seeing the whole, or our universe, as a tiny fragment. And so when you ask the question, well, how many other worlds are there other than ours? And when you start to imagine all these other infinite many worlds, when you see the world from the bottom up, when you see the distinction in form as above nothingness, then it seems the infinite number of worlds just seems so much. It just seems almost impossible because it's so much. Well, in this perspective, now you're seeing our world as just a tiny fragment of the whole, and here now you can see the many worlds as all the different many, in a sense, slices of the pie, all the different many parts of the whole. So the whole is, the largest frame of reference that you have. It's the infinite, the timeless infinite whole, and then you see all the universes as less than that whole, and even the infinite number of many worlds all of a sudden doesn't seem so great because each is just a different slice of the pie, and that pie is always whole, and it's always there, and it's always timeless, and always has been and always will be. And all the different worlds the world that we experience, plus all the other worlds that we recognize as possibilities, equal possibilities to our own, are just slices of that whole pie.
Right, and I guess that's one of the things that I think your project has brought to people, and I feel like my project has too, is it's giving people ways to imagine that fabric that everything comes from, that part that is outside the system that we're currently in. And it gives us a way to think not in terms of what came before the Big Bang or what happens after the universe, because that's not really the question. What we're talking about is there's this overall fabric that is always there, and if you want to think of that as quantum fields, or if you want to think of that as indeterminacy, or if you want to think of that as zero, the unfolded everything, it's all really different ways of thinking about the same thing, isn't it?
I absolutely, or God. It's all the ways of thinking about the same thing. Nature, reality, existence, the universe, the infinite universe, timelessness. All those words are referring to the same thing, and it's funny when you think about it that what we have always thought of as nothing and this zero and really taken for granted in a sense, it turns out to be everything. It's always what we've been referring to and looking up and going, wow, it's a big place and what's out there and all time, the whole in a sense includes all life, not just life that's been on this planet, but all the life that's in infinite worlds. And as hard as it is to imagine, those are all the slices of the pie, and they're all in there, in the whole. And so back again to that, we have such a hard time imagining the possibility, or seeing the world as seen in a sense that balance as being full, and yet we are familiar with certain concepts such as light as containing all the colors, and we can perceive the world in that way. It's very possible to switch into that perspective and see all the distinction of worlds as one great whole.
I'm glad you brought up God, because I think that's one of the things that is still re requiring some people to take another step forward, is that what we're talking about here can be viewed from a very scientific viewpoint. It can also be viewed from a very spiritual standpoint, and I think both of us agree that what we're trying to work our way towards here is identifying that both of those are different ways of thinking about the same thing. And the people who say, I don't want to talk about this because it's about God, and people who say, I don't want to talk about this because it's about science, while they're certainly welcome to come at this from their own perspective, what we're trying to do here is find the place where all of that meets in the middle. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I certainly agree. I mean, it's no coincidence that both of us were, in a sense, with our books and our writing, we're trying to see the big picture and understand, fit in a sense, all possibilities into a model. And my model only more or less looks at the many worlds theory, or the many worlds that are similar to our own. And your model, in a sense, looks at all the possibilities, and it's no coincidence that those two models fit together and tell the same story. And when we gain a full understanding of reality, then certainly all the different ways that people have tried to interpret the universe and understand the universe fit into that same system. The ultimate system does include both science and religion, or both science and spirituality. I could go on and on. It's a long subject.
Well, I think we should wrap it up today, Gevin. But this has really been a great discussion. I hope you're going to be able to do this again with me sometime in the future, because I think you do bring an awful lot of really great ideas to the table, and I just feel so fortunate to have you here as a resource.
Thank you. I feel fortunate, Rob, that there's someone else out there that understands and has written about the same kind of things. This is a great connection we're making, and I hope to have many long conversations in the future.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Gevin. And from Imagining the 10th Dimension, the video blog, this is Rob Bryanton. Bye for now. Hi, it's Rob Bryanton back here with the Imagining the 10th Dimension video log, and today we are talking to Gevin Giorbran, the author of Everything Forever, Learning to See Timelessness, one of my favorite books, and a book that really opened my eyes to how important the aspects of grouping and symmetry are to the way that our reality is created. Gevin, welcome.
Really actually think of white light as full, as if the colors are literally inside there creating the white light, and that's the concept in the book. That's probably the key concept that I'm trying to explain, is that what appears to us to be nothing, to have no qualities, can in a sense be an unfolded order, in the same way I explain it in the book.
Having the 0 at the bottom and the 10 both on a line that connects the two of them together was deliberately placed there, because that was what I was seeing. But what you introduced me to was the idea that the end of our universe unfolds back into that same zero again, an unfolded symmetry. And the idea that there is symmetry and grouping happening throughout our reality is one of the ideas that that you really so eloquently introduced us to. And do you want to talk a little bit about that today?
Well, it's interesting the way we sort of reject the notion that the idea of unfoldment, the way that things can, in a sense, be enfolded into something and invisible to us and there, but we just can't see them. Um, with symmetry order, I mean, we're actually accustomed to those kind of concepts with in certain ways. For example, light. We appreciate that white light contains all the primary colors and the tertiary colors, and that they're somehow in there. But we don't.
Welcome to the show.
Hi, Rob. Good to be here.
So for me, when I was first introduced to your ideas, the thing that was really the boing moment for me was when you got to the idea that at the outside edges of our reality, everything unfolds back into zero. And when I was creating the graphic for my project, I had intuitively understood that, but I hadn't really seen all the ramifications of it that you introduced me to. The idea in the helix graphic that's associated with this project